In this video, we're going to be covering the topic finding the roots of a quadratic equation where the leading coefficient is 1. Okay, so these are quadratic equations just of the form x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay, so there's no coefficient out front other than just 1. Okay, so hopefully we've all seen this before. This shouldn't be overly new when it comes to factoring equations, but let's just go over a few examples just to make sure. So for this first one here, we're given v squared minus 9v plus 20 is equal to 0. Now, given an equation like this, you have a couple of options. One option that always works here is to use the quadratic formula. We haven't covered that yet. We will here very soon. But before we get there, there's one easier technique that we can use if we're given an equation that plays nice here. Okay, so for this one of the things that we can do, and you should always check this, by the way, if you have a leading coefficient of 1 for your polynomial, you should always check this. Okay, can we find any two numbers that multiply together to give us 20 in this case, and add together to give us negative 9 in this case? Okay, so if they add together to give us, they multiply together to give us 20, and they add together to give us negative 9. All right. So in these cases, usually this is just simply a case of learning how to recognize this. You can factor 20 and you can factor negative 9. So I would encourage you to do that. For negative 9, you'd get 1, you'd get 3, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 3, and you get plus or minus 9. Okay. So those are your possible factors. For 20, you would get 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20, right? Plus or minus for all of those, okay? So, and then you can look for different combinations of those. But for this one, we can notice that the two numbers that I multiply together to give us positive 20 and add together to give us negative 9 are negative 5 and negative 4. So we can actually just rewrite this equation as v minus 5 times v minus 4. And if you want to FOIL this back out, you'll find that this actually ends up giving us back our initial equation, okay? So we would get v squared minus 4v minus 5v, so there's our negative 9v, and then we get negative 5 times negative 4 would give us positive 20. So we would get our equation back. And this is going to be equal to 0. And now what we would do is we would just do what we did for our last video, which is to set each of these factors equal to 0. So we have v minus 5 equals 0, means we add 5 to both sides, and we get v equals 5 as one of our solutions. And then we set v minus 4 equal to 0, and if we add 4 to both sides, that will give us one of our solutions as well, where v is equal to 4. So there we go. Let's take a look at this one. We have y squared minus 5y minus 14. So here we want to find, if we can, two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 14 and add together to give us negative 5. All right, so start by factoring everything here. If we factor 5, we get, if we factor negative 14, we would get 1, we would get 2, we would get 7, and we would get 14, okay, plus or minus in all of those. So we want to find two numbers that add together to give us negative 5 and multiply together to give us negative 14. So here, I'm thinking we'll have y minus 7 and y plus 2. Okay? So if we add negative 7 plus 2, that will give us negative 5. And if we take negative 7 times 2, that'll give us negative 14. So if we set this equal to 0, we can see, hopefully pretty quickly, if we plugged in 7 here, so we would get y equals 7 as one of our solutions. And if we plugged in a negative 2 here, we would set this equal to 0. So we would get y equals negative 2. For this last one, we'll have w squared minus 10w plus 24. So we want to find two numbers that multiply together to give us 24 and add to give us negative 10. So if we are factors of 24, I'll write them out this time. There's a few of them. Factors of 24, we'll get plus or minus 1. We'll get plus or minus 2. We'll get plus or minus 3. We'll get plus or minus 4, plus or minus 6, plus or minus 8. We'll get plus or minus 12, and we'll get plus or minus plus or minus 24 itself, right? Okay, so there we go. So these should be all the factors of 24. So you want to find out which combination of these would add to give you negative 10. So find all of the ones that add up to give you negative 10. So you could have, and I guess you just find all the ones that add up to negative 10 and then also multiply to give you positive 24. So really here we just have the only ones that actually do that are negative 6 and negative 4. If we add negative 6 to negative 4, we get negative 10. And if we multiply negative 6 times negative 4, we get 24. So therefore, we can rewrite this as w minus 6 times w minus 4 equals 0. And therefore, our solutions are w equals 6 and w equals 4. And hopefully we can see why that works given our previous examples. If we plug in 6 for this w here, this would be equal to 0 times 6 minus 4, so it doesn't matter what 6 minus 4 is because this is 0. And if we plugged in 4 here, we would get this one equal to 0, and so then the whole equation would be equal to 0. Okay? So there we go. W equals 6 and W equals 4.